Welcome to the No-Beat Cascade online course level 1. After 2 years of teaching and experimenting with different methods to teach no-beat juggling, I finally managed to put together this online course. In this video, I will show you the most efficient method to learn no-beats from the very foundations all the way to the 3-point no-beat cascade. I chose to put this video out there for free, but if you want to donate and support my work, please head over to my Patreon page. Ready to go? Let's start! First off, the prerequisites. Please, before starting this online course, make sure that while playing no beats using the windmill technique with 2 poi and keeping each poi in the same hand is easy for you, as well as while playing no beats in both directions. Not necessarily prerequisites, but I also highly recommend practicing standard juggling with rotations, with pendulum in wheel playing with 2 poi and 3 poi, and also in wall playing with spins. If you can't do this yet, please head over to my Patreon. I have plenty of tutorials to learn all of those techniques I just named. Let's start with some foundational knowledge, starting with the grip. The grip for no beats is this one. I want the middle finger and the pinky finger to create this nice little tunnel shape around the rope so that the knob can rest right beside the pinky finger. And also that way, since this grip is very loose, there is no tightness on your hand, the rope is going to be able to slide along the inside of your palm as you catch the rope. Now let's take a look at the anatomy of a no-beat throw. Understanding perfectly the mechanic of a no-beat throw is going to be a key component in succeeding to learn the no-beat cascade and all of the drills that I'm going to show you in this video. No-beat throws are based on a circular momentum, which gives them this circle shape. Here, let's try to break down this circle in order to understand how to keep that momentum going perfectly. Let's start with the first quarter of our circle. Here, the poi is in our hand and we go all the way down to get as much momentum as possible for the second quarter, where we go all the way forward and up to the horizontal points. The third quarter is where we release the poi and the fourth quarter is where we catch the poi. But for now, let's focus on the third quarter. We'll get back to the other steps later on in the video. This third quarter is really important because it is the release point of the knob. The third quarter starts at the horizontal point. At the horizontal point, you start opening your hand, but careful, this is not the throw. You want to keep the contact with the knob all the way till the middle of the third quarter, around 2 p.m. if you watch your clock. Here you can see that the knob is really sliding all the way to my fingertips, and I keep the contact as long as possible. Keeping the contact with the knob as long as possible whilst letting the knob slide along your fingertips proves to be often quite difficult for beginners, and it is a very important tool to learn no-beat throws and release at the correct timing and angle. To practice proper release, take a ball or the head of another poi and hold on to it in front of your chin. The game here is to try to keep the contact with the knob and only release it when your palm touches the ball. It should feel like a chain reaction. Palm touches the head, knob leaves the fingertips. A second exercise, which is even more efficient but more difficult, is to go all the way to your opposite shoulder before letting the knob go. Start by trying to get as close as possible from your shoulder before releasing the knob, and then step by step go all the way to touching your shoulder with your palm before releasing the knob. This drill is not only about waiting for the perfect release point. It is also about making sure that you build up enough momentum from the catch all the way down, forward and up to the horizontal point. So remember the quadrant we made at the start of the video. The first quarter, you go all the way down. Second quarter, you go forward and up. And respecting those 2 first steps will give you the proper momentum to go all the way backward, upwards to release correctly. Practicing feeling that sense of momentum build up during the downswing, the first 2 quarters, is really important because most people will stay stuck in this specific form that I'm showing right now on the video, where the no-beat is correct but it's way too small, there is not enough momentum. You should be able, like shown on the video right now, to clap behind your back with your hands before catching the poi again. Combining that sense of momentum build-up along with the proper release shown in the first drills is going to be key to get a proper form. Enough foundations now, let's go for the step 1, the snake pattern. This pattern is basically a 3-object cascade with one missing object, therefore 2 objects here. We are going to practice the same thing with boy. Before getting into more details, please notice that my elbows are never or barely moving. I always keep them alongside my rib cage and never want them to go in front of my body. This is a form that's really important to keep for all of the drills with no beat throws. To start the snake pattern, one specific type of timing is required with the pendulums. You don't want to use same time hands together. You don't want to use same time hands apart either. You want to use a very slight split time here as shown on the video. This specific timing is very important because it's mimicking the timing you will need during the throws, and it's also really important to start straight away with the correct timing. It is really bad to change the timing as you already are into the movement. Really get the proper timing from the start during the pendulums before you start throwing. A really helpful drill to make sure that you can keep the correct rhythm and momentum easily during the snake pattern is to only do 2 throws of the snake pattern and transition right away into pendulums, and then follow right away after by more throws. So it's like throw, throw, pendulum, pendulum, throw, throw, pendulum, pendulum. If the transition from the throws to the pendulum feels easy without disturbing the momentum, and you find the perfect momentum every time you get back to the pendulums, that means that you have the proper form. To make the crossing throws easy, make sure to keep a slight diagonal plane on your pendulums. Then replacing the pendulums with behind the head pendulums is going to be very beneficial in order to get the proper form of taking as much as possible advantage of that downswing, this big pendulum, before we go all the way up to throw. Once the drills with the pendulums are easy to do, you can start practicing the same snake pattern, but with spins instead of pendulums, and then just go for the full snake pattern without any extra spins. Once you got the snake down, let's go for the step 2, the one hand release. O to release 2 consecutive no beat throws from one hand. Being able to do that release easily is mandatory for the 3-point no beat cascades. I recommend practicing both sides, right hand and left hands. Then, once you get used to doing the release, you can start your snake pattern out of this one-handed release. This is the grip I'm using. Always remember that the pinky side goes first and then the thumb side goes second. Here, again and again, I will not say it enough, the pendulums are key. Make sure to do a nice wide and low pendulum before releasing the boy. Then it is really important to notice that your pinky side, the first throw, is only doing a pendulum before it's being thrown. But your thumb side is going to do a spin right after the first throw before it's being thrown itself. So it is really important to put the emphasis on going all the way down during that extra spin to make sure that that second throw is going to be correct. And here as well, remember to put a diagonal plane into your pendulum. If the spin of the second poi almost touches your ear, you're doing it right. It should really go close to your face as you spin the second poi. Practice the release with both hands. Then go for one additional throw. And finally, 4 throws in a row, which makes all of the poi come back in the hand that initially threw everything. So here, the right hand. We go for right hand, left hand, and back to right hand. At this point, the snake pattern should be easy and comfortable. Make sure to keep your elbows in. Here, you can see the pattern goes forward. You should be in the pattern. The poi should go all the way around you. You should even see the heads go past your back on the video. Let's go for the step 3, the 2-poi one-hand no beat. This drill is the best drill, it's the most efficient to help you with the cascade later on. So we start by observing those normal well-played no beats, which are a perfect little circle. And now we want to break that circle and go for a cat-high vertical shape instead of a small circle. Here we create this by going lower and taking advantage of that downswing, so we take more momentum on the way down in order to have the poi floating way more higher up. As usual, make sure to keep your elbow at the same spot, perfectly isolated at all time. Then work on the same thing with your right hand in the same direction, still transitioning from small throw to higher throw in a cat-high shape. Now let's take the windmill pattern. And from the windmill pattern, we're going to do one exchange. So each poi is going to go from one hand to the other by using the exact same momentum and mechanic we used on the precedent drill with one poi. Here, I throw the left hand first and then do an exchange in my right hand. This is the transition that we will use later on to go into the 2-poi one-hand no beat. This is how the progression should go. Start by one exchange, so left hand, right hand, and back to the windmill. Then go for two exchanges, so left hand, and right hand again, and back to the windmill. And gradually add more throws from your right hand before you come back to the windmill. And this will get you to the 2-poi no beat one-handed pattern. This pattern is extremely important to learn the cascade with 3-poi no beats, because although it is a very different pattern than the cascade, it will give you the momentum control and the speed and the accuracy necessary to learn the 3-poi no beat cascade way faster. Let's check out a few mistakes I often see on that pattern. First one, pushing the knob vertically, which makes the poi under-rotate. We don't have a perfect no beat, and it either goes too high or just it's not rotating enough, and it's really hard to keep going from that. Here, the only reason is that you have this weird vertical pathway that you want to avoid at all costs. You really want to make sure that the knobs are following a circular pathway. See, I'm really going for a curve movement with my hand when I go up. And this is really the most important thing for all no beat patterns. Second mistake I often see on that pattern is the knobs slightly going away as you throw them, which makes the poi slightly over-rotate, and therefore you catch the poi when the head is already pointing down, which makes the control of the momentum really tricky. Here, you really want to make sure that the wrist is the prolongation of your arm. Don't flex your wrists as you throw. Another mistake I see a lot amongst beginners is bringing your hand way too high to try to keep the pattern going. Just make sure to keep your hand circling around the elbow level. Last mistake to avoid is releasing the poi under horizontal level. This is way too early and the pattern is going to go on the side and you will have to run sideways to keep it going. So make sure to not do this and wait the correct angle as we saw in the foundational chapter. Make sure that you always go past horizontal level to release. To be able to run the 3-poi cascade comfortably, I recommend being able to do 6 catches of this pattern on both hands. It is not a prerequisite, but making sure that you can run this pattern without having your elbow moving around, really having the perfect form, is really helpful to work on at the same time as you work on the 3-poi no beat cascade. Of course, if you feel comfortable with the start from one hand, go ahead and practice it right away, without starting with a windmill in both hands. Everything we saw till now are the main preparative drills for the cascade, but let's see a few more bonus ones. The 3-1-2, which is the side swap notation to say a throw, a swap, and an extra spin after the swap, is an extremely good drill because it gives you a bit more time than a snake to focus on having a really clean throw. So I would totally use this one to work on accuracy of your release. For a quick breakdown of this pattern, the same poi always does a swap and a spin, and the same poi always does a crossing throw as a no beat. When you work on this pattern, please make sure that the no beat is nice and wide, that you go all the way down on the downswing, and that the head goes past your back when you catch the poi. Here, this is the form I often see with beginners that do this pattern wrong. You can see that the no-beat throw, the pink boy, is barely rotating and everything stays in front of you and doesn't go past your back. Second bonus drill is a 3-4-0-3-2, a very long notation to say one boy does a column and a spin, and one boy does a normal crossing throw. This pattern is one-sided, so please practice it on both sides, doing the column on the right side and also the column on the left side. Now, over with the 2-poi drills, let's go for the 3-poi flash. A flash means 3 throws and catches in a row. To get started with the flash, we are going to use the same technique that we used on the snake versus pendulum that we practiced at the start of the video. Here, remember, pendulum, pendulum in a slight split time and then 2 throws in a row. And then back to the pendulums. But here with 3-poi, we are not going to go back to the pendulums after. So, using the 2-poi grip on your right hand or left hand, depending on which one is your dominant hand, and then doing pendulums with the correct timing, and only releasing the pinky side of your right hand and the poi in your left hand. Therefore, in this drill, we are only releasing 2 poi out of 3. The 3rd poi is staying in our hand, going for a spin, and we stop the pattern. Here, just make sure to do this comfortably and catching everything exactly at the same spot as you threw everything. Your hands should stay and wait for the poi. As you saw on the video, I switched from starting with my right hand with 2 poi to starting with my left hand with 2 poi. I think it is a really good idea to practice both sides. Now let's go for the actual flash. You will do the exact same thing that we did, releasing only 2 poi, but this time we are going to release the 3rd one, the same way that we would do for the 2 poi one hand release that we learned previously on the video. To make it super clean, really focus on all the foundational knowledge we talked about in the video, and also think about going all the way down, taking advantage as much as possible of the downswing of the 3rd poi before you throw this 3rd throw. At this point, most people get excited and try to work on more throws and catches to run the 3-poi a bit longer. Please here, make sure to make the 3-poi flash the 3 throws as clean as possible before moving on to longer runs. Here, at this point, somehow the main mistake I see is people not respecting the correct pendulums. Really make sure that you stick to the correct timing of your pendulums as shown on the video. This slight split time of the heads following each other is really the perfect timing to kickstart the pattern, so make sure that you get it right. Let's check out a few mistakes to avoid at all costs while working on the flash. Don't force the pendulums. I often see people sticking to more or less the good rhythm, but they are forcing the pendulums. Make sure that you only do pendulums that are very nicely and naturally swinging from one side to the other using the gravity. Throwing too early under the horizontal level is also a mistake I see a lot with beginners starting up on the 3-poi cascade. Make sure that you release past the horizontal point around 2 p.m. as we talked about in the foundational chapter. Last one, if the poi are slightly over-rotating and the knobs are going away forward, this means that you are flexing your wrist as you're throwing. Make sure, again, as I said earlier, to use your wrist as the prolongation of your forearm. Now let's go for the qualify 6 catches, which basically means let's go for longer runs. If your flash is clean, going past the flash and going for all the way to 6 catches is just about learning to keep the momentum going properly. The flash teaches you how to get the momentum of the starting and throw properly. The rest is going to teach you how to keep the momentum going. And keeping the momentum going is all about making sure that you take advantage again of those downswings. To understand better how to keep the pattern going, let's check out a few mistakes to avoid while running the pattern. First mistake, pushing the knobs up. This will make the poi under-rotate and you won't have a perfect no-beat rotation. It will also lead to having your elbows going up and down. Second mistake, drawing circles with your elbows. I see this mistake a lot with people that are really close from running the pattern. Make sure to keep your elbows as still as possible. That way the catching point is always going to be the same. A third mistake I see a lot is putting too much pressure on the grip. This will make the behavior of the rope in the air unpredictable, and will make letting the rope slide through your fingers at the catching point way harder. Last mistake, asymmetrical planes. I often get asked what is better between diagonal planes and straight planes for the no-beat cascade. And to be honest, both are fine, as long as you do it symmetrically. Make sure that both hands are throwing in the same angle and plane. That's it, this is all you need to know about the no-beat cascade to learn it properly. But now let's cover one last important point, the training method. If I were to relearn it all over again, this is how I would do it. Every day at the start of my practice session, I would make sure that the snake pattern with 2-poi is clean and consistent by practicing going for 100 catches. Then I would go for the flash, and I'm going to do it twice. First with my right hand starting with 2-poi and then with my left hand starting with 2-poi. Make sure that you get it twice properly without walking around or any correction. Then I would go for the qualify 6 catches, and I would do it twice. And if I fail at doing the qualify twice, I would go back to the flash, do the flash twice, and then try the qualify again. And only when you get the qualify perfect twice, will you go for 12 catches. Then go for 12 catches twice, and again, if you fail at doing 12 catches perfectly twice, go all the way back to the flash, etc, etc. I really like this method and find it extremely efficient because it will make you work on shorter runs clean more than long runs that are not necessarily clean all the way till the end. I also enjoy this method a lot because it kind of feels like a video game where you have to progress as far as possible, and then if you fail, you come back to the start. Last point, it is really important to set yourself goals every day. Never start a practice session without knowing how many catches you want to reach.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support my work, get access to many other courses and tutorials like this one, or even take Zoom classes with me, please go check out my Patreon page. I also want to give a shout out to all my Patreon supporters, Things on Strings, Juggling Calling, and Catapult Berlin for making this video possible.